Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Kelly Campbell, and I'm excited to welcome you to our webinar today. So as you can see, the title is here on the front slide. The goal of today's webinar is to introduce you to the Black Lives Matter movement, if you don't already know much about it, and also to help you get involved. And really it's to provide you with a lot of resources. So you're going to get a lot of information, but you'll be able to refer back to that afterwards and visit some of the information that we provide you with. It's a bit of a surprise that I'm here talking to you. I mean, I came here to introduce the session, but really I wanted my student, Emily Lugo, to be the one to deliver this talk today. In fact, she is the person who put together this entire PowerPoint presentation for you, but she unexpectedly had a death in the family. Her grandfather, who she was very close with, just passed away. And so I was talking with her earlier today, asking her if she was able to continue and to deliver this talk. She's understandably overcome with grief, and so she didn't know that she would be able to get through it. And so she told me what she wanted to convey is that he is an Afro-Latino man. He's an activist. She comes from a family of activists. She's an activist herself. And he would definitely want her to do this presentation. They had talked about it beforehand. So she says, please go ahead and deliver it. Get this information out to the students. And so that's what I'm here to do. Even though I'm not a student myself, I'm a professor in the psychology department. I'm still going to get this information out. It is being recorded, and we will post it on PsyChi's YouTube site, which I'll give you that information at the end. You can see it also at the bottom of your screen here. And what I will tell you is that I teach a race and racism course here on campus, and Emily Lugo, the presenter and the person who developed this, she's my TA for the course. She's also a psychology honors student. And she developed this PowerPoint as a way to get resources to my class. And so then when I saw what she'd done, I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was so informative. And I said it needs to reach a broader audience. So let's try to advertise it and get it out to as many students as we can. And so that's why you're getting this information today. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go through her slides. Again, I didn't develop the slides. And so I'll do my best to share with you what she asked me to relay. So we'll start with this quote here. So from Malcolm X, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. And he was obviously an activist, during the civil rights era. And many people are saying that today what we're seeing with all the protest is very reminiscent of that time period. Unfortunately, not a lot has changed. And so that's why there's a need to deliver a talk like this and for you all to get involved. So let's talk about Black Lives Matter. I should mention that, that the time we're living in right now is a very traumatic time, not only because we started with COVID-19 this quarter, and now we've added a lot of events recently that we're going through, and we're experiencing a lot of negative emotions. And for that reason, we actually have in our session today on our panel 2 counselors. We have Ms. Hattie McNutt, who is both counselors work at the Counseling and Psychological Services here on campus, so otherwise known as CAPS. She's on hand with us, as well as Ms. JJ Gless, and they are going to be talking to you. I'll talk maybe for 20 minutes. They're going to talk to you as we move throughout the presentation. But you may have some questions related to this trauma or to feelings you're experiencing, and they can help us navigate through some of that. Okay, so let's get into some of the history in terms of the movement. This movement was started by these 3 women shown here on the slide, and their names are on the right. So Alicia Garza, Patrice Colors, and Opal Tometi. And they developed the movement in 2013 in response to the acquittal of George Zimmerman in the murder trial of Trayvon Martin. And so if you don't know about that case, it's certainly not one of the first that we've seen in this country where a person was acquitted when they murdered a person of color. The thing that's changed more recently is, you know, I say this isn't new. What is new is the ability to power to the people in terms of, you know, we carry cell phones on us now. We record things now. We get it out through social media, and people are able to become aware of different things that they weren't aware of in the past. So that really is what has changed a lot. And so, you know, the reason for this movement, it's been there all along, but now here we are where people say enough is enough, and they want to get involved, you know, across, no matter their background, people are wanting to get involved. So I encourage you to go to the link down at the bottom there. Just go to the source, you know, just go to the Black Lives Matter page, the website, and that's the best place to start learning about the history of the movement. Okay, so they have different values, they have different beliefs, and you can access that through their site. I will mention that one of the things they really believe in is that they don't want this to be a movement that where only Black people are involved. They want as many people involved as possible, and they realize that in highlighting, you know, the rights of Black people, and in promoting the social justice for African Americans, that this is going to extend to other marginalized groups as well. And so it's important to know that, and to see how broad, you know, what their mission is. And also, it's not tied just to the US. So they have a goal to help liberate Black people all over the world. And so you can go to their website to learn more about that. This link down here is really an amazing place where you can go and you can find so much information on different leaders and different topics that are relevant to this movement. So I really encourage you to use that as a resource. Visit there, you can get a lot of information. Okay, so what can you do to help? And this little picture, this image comes from the Instagram account down there at the bottom. Worry Lines is an artist. He showcases art, and so there's various ways, and we're going to go through those different ways. And so the rest of the PowerPoint addresses these various ways. So showing up with yourself, your body, getting out there and protesting, with your money, donating, and I'll even show you ways, if you don't have any money, you can still donate. I'll show you a really creative way that Emily found to do that, by being vocal, whether, you know, using a megaphone, through social media, whatever it is, learning, listening, and then with your time. We're going to go through these different things. Okay, so in terms of getting out there to protest, we are in that unique time period that I mentioned of COVID-19 right now. And so if you're going to get out there, because of that unique historical period we're in, you want to protect yourself, not only because protesters can experience you know, violence, unfortunately, but also because it's COVID. So wear your masks, wear your gloves, and keep your distance to the extent possible. And you can find, there's the links provided here, so you can find a lot more information about how to protect yourself, but also about knowing your rights, your First Amendment rights. For instance, if you go out and protest and you are being violent or engaging in destruction of property, you do no longer have protection under that First Amendment. So you want to know what your rights are. Emily had some very great tips. As I mentioned, she's an activist, comes from a family of activists. And so she mentioned, as you can see here, writing phone numbers on your arm in case if you get arrested, that you actually have access to things. If your phone and things get taken away from you, that you still have it written there. And so she's like, have 2 contacts on hand with their phone numbers on your arm. Have, if you're an activist and a protester and you do this regularly, you'll want to have an attorney and have their number on hand. So there's a lot of information that you want to ideally get prepared for as you head out into the streets, if that's what you're going to do. And then she said, you know, other tips like, you know, don't take pictures of other protesters, but know that if you're out there in public, you could end up on the news, your face could end up there. So you have to be okay with that. Don't share, turn off location sharing on your phone, because people can find out where you are. And I was just, talking to the counselors who are here with us today about, the case of Yucaipa, where some of the protesters last week were met with violence by anti-protesters. And so you just want to be safe when you get out there. And then here we have a map of different protests. But if you can't get out in the streets, then go to this link over here. So there are ways that you can still make a difference, even if you're not out there being active in the streets. If you're out there, know that there are risks. And so these are meant to be, as it's stated here, defensive things. You're not going to be, instigating any of this yourself where you need to use these things. But if you experience any adverse effects from tear gas, you can use a solution like this that you may prepare in advance and bring along with you. For pepper spray, people use milk to help with the effects of that. And then with rubber bullets, you want to make sure that if there's any blood, or if there's any serious damage, that you call 911 and you get yourself to a hospital, because I think just in the news today, someone lost an eye. I mean, you really have to be careful if you're hit with one of those. In terms of donating, so Emily did a really good job of thoroughly vetting, to the extent that she could, any link that she was providing in this presentation, because sometimes when you're donating to causes, you don't know where the money goes, and you don't want to be supporting something that you didn't realize, oh, the money's going somewhere that that doesn't align with my values. But here she said the top link is especially important. You could go visit it because there's so much information, but then she's included several other organizations that you could donate. And she said that students, they really don't have a lot of money. I remember myself what it was like as an undergrad, but the thing about it is that she said so many students are even donating $1, $2, $5, and that as power in numbers goes very far, the more people who do it. But the interesting thing, as I mentioned earlier, of what you can do if you don't have any money to donate, that's understandable. Students don't have a lot of money most times, is that she found this place where you can go on YouTube. And you basically, just by watching this video, there's going to be money that's accumulated that goes to this cause. And so she said just some steps here, like, what you need to do to make sure that they actually get the money. But she's like, just let it play, just let it play out, and you're able to donate, even if you don't have money to donate, that they will be able to benefit that way. Okay, in terms of these different ways here, so just everyone has a different way that they personally feel comfortable contributing, or where their strengths lie. And so you definitely want to learn. I mean, you want to learn as much as possible. So whether that's, through books, through some of these links that I've provided you with today, you want to listen, because that's how we learn about people's personal experiences. We just sit there and we listen to what they have to say without interrupting. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the power is with the people right now through social media. You can spread the word, you can get active even if you're not out in the street. So there's various ways that you can contribute. Just know what works for you and what you're comfortable doing. I mean, it's not even about comfortable. It's not a very comfortable thing to get out there and protest. It's a risky thing. There's a lot of fear in that. So it is also natural you might not feel comfortable, but maybe start where you're comfortable and you can progress into something more, build on that. Okay, so in terms of this slide, there's just various groups that she's targeting the information toward. And so depending, like a lot of students in my race and racism class will say, oh, my parents are racist or my grandparents are racist. How can I, meet them where they're at, or talk to them, or expose them to some of this information? And so there's different groups here that you may want to visit these links and learn about how to talk to these various people. This one down at the bottom has quite a few different people all grouped there. And at the end of this talk, I'm going to show you, 2 more events that are coming up. One is tomorrow, and that is for parents, how to talk to their children about race and racism. And so I'll show you that at the end. But in any case, as I mentioned, this is all getting recorded. We're going to be posting it on the CSUSB Sci-Chi webpage, and you can go visit all these links that I'm providing you with today. This one, she said, again, there's different information largely about, you know, learning and being an ally, not only for the Black Lives Matter movement, but also for other marginalized groups, of how to be an ally. Emily really liked this one at the top because she said that this one is, there's so much information out there and so much information you're even getting from this brief session we're having today. But she was saying that this one at the top, it breaks it down into a 30-day plan where it's something that you can do each day. So for every day of a month, let's say, or 30 days, you have some tips on what you can do. And so if this is really where you're at, you're just getting started, then that would be a good one to visit. Here's a picture of Jane Elliott, and if you don't know, you know, you may have seen her in the news lately. She's the woman who, after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, she developed this exercise for her 3rd grade class of blue eyes versus brown eyes. And a lot of us professors who teach race and racism show that clip. It was obviously now so many years ago, like 40 years ago, but she's now 87. And I had shown that clip in my class one day, and the students turned in their assignments, and this is a class of almost 300 students. And when I was reading through the assignments, one of the students wrote that Jane Elliott is my grandmother. And so the next class I said, oh, you know, could you please come down and see me, the person who wrote that? And so he came down and I said, is that true? He said, yeah. I said, would she come talk to our class? And he's like, I don't know, I'll ask her. And then he comes back the next day, he's like, or the next class, he said, yeah, she'll come next week. So she came to our class, and ever since then, I've had a relationship with her where we've brought her to campus for several years in a row now. This year she was supposed to come, but then COVID-19 hit, so she couldn't. But she's 87 years old, and she's out there in the streets, and she's there with her megaphone. She was concerned about COVID, you know, obviously she's an older person, but she's an inspiration for us in the sense that when you're in college, that's the time where you're really active, where you have the energy, even though it might not feel like it because you're so stressed with a lot of things. But really, like that's the time where you start getting that activist spirit and getting out there. And she's an example of, don't let that die, you know, keep on fighting for social change, because this is a lifelong pursuit. Unfortunately, it's not going to be solved in our lifetime. But anyways, Emily included this quote from her: we wouldn't have to have Black Lives Matter if we hadn't had 300 plus years of Black Lives Don't Matter. And so when we say all lives matter, of course, all lives matter. But the point is that exactly what she has said here is that that phrase, all lives matter, glosses over the fact that there is a great injustice and that needs to be addressed right now. So again, here are some more links for you where you can get involved to become an ally in various ways and with various groups. Okay, so in terms of your time, how do you show up with your time? So she's highlighted some petitions here that you can sign that, again, she's done some vetting in terms of feeling as though they're aligned with the movement and they're safe, they're good to sign. And then some tips that you can follow, some resources to help you as you navigate through, you know, sending letters out and getting active with contacting politicians, etc., people who can help make policy changes at the macro level. And so the rest, she has 3 more slides, and really what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my share right now. She has 3 more slides that are intended for helping to cope with, as I mentioned, some of this trauma that people are experiencing for all the things going on right now. It's one of the most chaotic periods in our lifetime, and probably will be. And so I'm going to turn it over to our 2 counselors from the Counseling and Psychological Services on campus at CSUSB, and they're going to talk to you more about some of those things. I'll come back at the end. We'll have a Q&A, so prepare any questions you have. If you have questions, I'll mention that you have a Q&A tab down there at the bottom. You can post them in there, and I'll be moderating that at the end, and then I'm going to get you more information on upcoming events and things like that. So let me turn it over now to Ms. Hattie McNutt.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. So I'm going to speak from a psychological perspective. I'm going to talk very briefly about trauma, coping, and then the importance of self-care as a form to cope with things. So I'm going to start off with trauma. So when we think about trauma, we understand it to be a deeply distressing and disturbing experience. So the majority of us will experience some type of trauma in our lifetime. A person will experience a wide range of emotional reactions to trauma. And that is because we all experience trauma differently. So, but we will exhibit similar symptoms such as, shock or disbelief, anxiety, anger, fear, sadness, helplessness. We may feel numb, and sometimes we feel disconnected. So trauma can lead to a certain level of distress based on 3 levels of distress that we work from. So a person can experience mild distress, which you may exhibit behaviors that do not disrupt others, but they indicate something is wrong and some type of assistance is needed. And from a psychological perspective, this is really when we encourage clients to come in and to see us, even if it's just to talk, to kind of express what you may be going through, and to have someone to listen and process that experience with you. And then there's moderate distress. You may exhibit behaviors that indicate significant emotional distress. You may be reluctant or unable to acknowledge that you need help, so you may not seek the help that you need immediately. This is when things get a little more difficult and your daily functions and starts to diminish. And various aspects of your life are being affected. And at this point, you really want to, come in and talk to someone or seek therapy. And then we work from a perspective of severe distress. You are exhibiting high disruptive behavior. And at this point, you're kind of at a crisis situation and you may be in need of a higher level of care. So when you engage in activities such as the ones talked about in this presentation, you can experience some degree of distress. You can experience some of distress just in the case of the topic and the subject matter of Black Lives Matter, the movement, the cause. It encompasses so much. So that in and of itself will create a sense of distress for a person. So it's not just a person that's affected by this, it's a people. It affects all of us. So in this particular situation, this is like, it's my belief, and I like to emphasize my belief and kind of the way I practice. I would take the emotional approach of coping, which involves the conscious use of emotional expression and processing to better deal with whatever it is that you may go into, the level of stress that you are having or feeling in this stressful situation. So the goal is to reduce the exposure to the stressor. So for example, if you choose to, let's say, go out and march as a protest to show your support for change, then you would want to, maybe when you remove yourself from that environment that may have caused some level of distress, you may engage in a stressful relaxation of journaling. And what journaling really does, it's an act of writing down your experience and your thoughts on to paper. So it actually is a kind of a transfer from the feelings inward to transferring that level of stress and anxiety and your emotions into journaling. And then maybe after journaling, you would engage in some mindfulness, like meditation, or listening to some soothing, relaxing music or something, just to kind of get yourself in a more at ease and relaxed place and set of mind. So that kind of brings me to coping. So when we refer to how we cope, we refer to a behavioral cognitive effort made by individuals in attempting to deal with stressful situations. Simply put, it's about taking actions to address the stress of the stressor. So in some ways that you can do that is often just seeking therapy. And seeking therapy could mean just simply, again, talk therapy. coming in to see a professional that can just really help you process through what you may be feeling or what you have experienced. And you can also, as well, confide in a trusted friend or a family member. The most important thing is making sure that you don't hold those feelings inside or have those emotions bottle up inside. You want to be able to release them. So you really want to talk about them. And again, practicing meditation and relaxation techniques, having some private time just for yourself, maybe to sit in silence in meditation. You also want to possibly engage in some type of physical activity or exercise. But I always emphasize that you should make sure that whatever the activity that you engage in, that you enjoy it. You don't want to engage in something that's going to create more stress and anxiety for yourself. Read a book or watch an uplifting movie. I always say you want to focus on something very positive and good. When I give this as an assignment to some of my clients, I'm amazed at some of the things that they choose to watch, but if it makes you feel better, then that's a personal choice. But as long as it doesn't increase your level of anxiety or stress. Again, spend time with friends. And it's also important when you spend time with friends, you want to make sure that they are very positive and encouraging, that they're going to help bring you up and help ease your level of stress and anxiety instead of make it worse. If you are a person of faith, engage in your spirituality. And you also want to focus on making sure that you take care of your, eating and sleeping and all of these things. One of the other things about engaging in emotional release is embracing those emotions. Don't deny yourself the ability to release those emotions. And sometimes that's simply crying. I come across people who just refuse to cry. They hold it in. And you really want to release those emotions, and crying is a wonderful way to do that. So in coping, one of the things that I like to focus on in coping is self-care and the importance of self-care. So self-care encourages you to maintain a healthy relationship with yourself so that you can feel good about yourself and transmit those good feelings to the people around you in any type of stressful situation. And these are very stressful times, and they're causes that are worthwhile and they're important, and we want to engage in them as much as possible. But we also want to make sure that we take care of ourselves, because we can't do what we want to do and create the impact that we want to create for the cause if we are not taking care of ourselves to be able to do that. So I often hear self-care is selfish, but self-care is not selfish. In fact, it's far from being selfish. When you pay adequate attention to your well-being, you also are taking into consideration the well-being of others. Because how we speak, how we act, and how we behave directly and indirectly affect those around us, which makes them feel a certain kind of way, which in turn makes them respond a certain kind of way. So when we don't do self-care, then it has a very negative impact on us as a person. So again, when we're engaging in certain activities, as stated in the presentation, there are certain precautions that we want to make. So one of those precautions that are extremely important is being, again, taking care of ourselves. Because when you practice self-care, you are kind of reinvigorating and energizing yourself so that you can be the very best version of yourself for the people around you, and that you can be more engaged and ready for the cause in which you want to engage into. So everyone should have an opportunity to be their best version of themselves. And that's why there is a fight for equality, for justice, for the right to live, and for the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Black people are fighting for the right to be the best version of themselves. So everyone around you benefits when you self-care. Coping through self-care provides us with an opportunity to self-love and self-like. You'd be amazed at how many times I come across people who say, I love myself, but I don't like myself. And that's an inward feeling. So we want to really focus on how do we get to a place of self-love and self-like. Self-love allows us to practice self-compassion and show self-appreciation. Having self-love makes us feel more self-secure and self-confident. It makes us feel more comfortable and open. It makes us more receptive and understanding, more willing to learn and to see and to hear, not only our perspectives, but others' perspectives. When we focus on these types of self-care, we increase significantly our ability to be concerned for others. We're not going to be able to have a very open and honest conversation and be impactful to others if we don't take care of ourselves and understanding the importance of us. Because when we have that inward feeling and knowledge about ourselves, we have a better sense of being open to understanding what other people are feeling, what other people are going through, and being more willing to be a part of that change. So I'm a firm believer that sometimes you have to pause and step into another man or woman's shoes to truly understand the path in which he or she has walked. So it is important for us to not so quickly assume and do not quickly judge. For, in my opinion, it may be a missed opportunity for you and I to be the best version of ourselves. So self-care is a mechanism, it's a method of coping so that, you know, we can have the compassion and the understanding to be able to be compassionate with other people, to be able to be open and willing to listen to what other people are feeling and experiencing. And that's why, you know, Black Lives Matter. That's why the movement occurred. And that's why, again, it's not just Black people that are out fighting for the cause that is so vital, important, not just to a person or a people, but to a nation. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, JJ, and she is going to give us a brief synopsis on the services that we provide here at CAPS.
Hey, everybody. When you hear about CAPS, CAPS is our counseling and psychological services. It is available to you. Your tuition has covered the cost. We are open daily, even though we're operating virtually. Our remote hours are Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30, except for on holidays. And we have a good system in the sense that if you call us, someone will pick up, and if not, you'll get a message after hours asking to leave a message. We will call you back the next day. Our therapy sessions are conducted through HIPAA compliant phone or video conferencing. So basically the same security as you would have if you reached out to your doctor. So you don't have to worry about Zoom bombing in any of our type of sessions. Your first session will need to be conducted through Zoom, but after that, if you would prefer a phone session, that's an option. We do offer individual sessions. Group therapy is also an option, but since we're about to end with our spring quarter, we'll start that back up again in the fall. To schedule your appointment, you call the main office number and the staff will guide you through the setup for that. You'll have some paperwork to fill out, but it really doesn't take a very long time. If you're in crisis, we have crisis appointments available for walk-in same day. If for any reason you're in crisis while we are closed, we actually have a phone system that you can call. It's called Protocol. You still call our main number and you press 8 and you'll be directed to a mental health professional. In addition to our groups, we offer workshops. If you go to our website, you'll see what we offered this spring quarter. We'll be doing that again and adding some things since we'll have more weeks in the semester. So please check back to see what we offer for that. We also have resources on our website page. The website is csuSB.edu, and then it's /CAPS. So please check our website out and you'll see resources for if you're needing something besides what we offer on campus. If any of you are wanting to come and participate in therapy over the summer, it's a little different in the sense that if you're not enrolled in fall classes, you do need to pay a fee. But if you're not enrolled in summer classes, if you are taking summer classes, your tuition covers the cost and you'll be good to go. I think that's the main components to our CAP services. We look forward to working with you. Anytime you want to come by, please let us know. We would like to be utilized. You know, it's kind of different in this Zoom session kind of work atmosphere, but it does work. And we really do want to help you guys. If you're going out there protesting, finding a way to have your voice be heard, things can become traumatic at times. And we want to be here to support you as you have your voice being heard, okay? And I'll give it back to Dr. Campbell.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to head back into my PowerPoint here. Let me just make sure I did. Let me do my share screen. Okay, so Emily had also put together a list of things here for how to cope. Of course, therapy is so important in, you know, I say go to it for your whole life, because it just helps to have someone who's a professional and they're trained and you can talk to them about whatever's on your mind and it doesn't stay in your head. It gets out, you get some feedback, and especially while you're students, because therapists normally charge like $200 to $300 an hour, and here we have them right on campus, and it's covered, as was mentioned, through your tuition. So do take advantage of that. But here she's also listed just some other things that was, you know, that was mentioned as well. And so I'll just put that up there so that it's there for you to access later. And then she concluded with this slide here. So it's just some different resources that are specific to what's going on right now with the death of George Floyd and with this movement. And then I mentioned to you before we get to our Q&A, I wanted to just tell you about two other events that are coming up tomorrow and the next day. So for tomorrow, we have one of the professors on campus who she's an early childhood educator, Dr. Amanda Wilcox. She's going to be presenting on how to talk to children about race. And so you can register for it with this link there. It'll be at 12 noon tomorrow. It's only a 30-minute webinar. So, you know, I know it's finals time, so a lot of students are studying right now, but if you have the time, and these are recorded, these webinars, they're hosted by the Institute for Child Development and Family Relations. There's a YouTube page for that, so it will get posted there. And then on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, there is going to be a part 2 to last week's panel session that they held on race and policing. And so these are, you know, this one on Wednesday, I assume will be just as amazing as the first one. So in fact, we had Ms. Hattie participate in the one last week. She was one of the panelists, and so this will continue the discussion. I don't know how many in the series they're planning, but at least this part 2 will be this Wednesday. So I'd like to also make mention of that. And then in terms of where you can access this information after today, we're going to be posting the recorded video on CSUSB Sci-Chi's YouTube page, as well as I'll put it up on my own YouTube page. So if you search, I was trying to navigate this prior to the session so I could give you specific instructions, but if you put in the search bar CSUSB Sci-Chi or my name and then use filter, then you can filter by channel, and then you can find channels, and so you'll be able to find the video posted there. But Sci-Chi is the National Honors Association in Psychology that is co-hosting this event with the Psychology Club, and so if you wanted to join, you could visit their page or just search CSUSB Sci-Chi. But importantly, we're going to be posting these actual slides into this shared Google Drive. In fact, I think they're already there. Let me see here, sorry. I think they're already posted, but this is quite a long link. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this link in when I upload the video to YouTube, these channels, we're going to put this, this Google Drive link in the description so you can access the actual slides. But worst case scenario, you could always email me. My email's pretty easy to remember, kelly@csusb.edu, and then I can just attach the slides for you. I'll just email you back with the slides, or with this link at least. So the Q&A, feel free to go ahead and put questions in there because we don't know what it is that you most want to ask us. You know, ideally you would have been able to ask Emily, but as I mentioned, she couldn't be here. But any questions you have for us about the movement, about how you can get involved? I know that the two questions I saw so far is really about accessing this PowerPoint, you know, after this event. So I've just mentioned how you can go ahead and get that access. But let me see here. I'll go back to the panel and see if there's any other questions that we can get answered for you. We have 20 minutes and we're here for you. Anything else that you wanted to add, the two of you, Ms. Hattie, Ms. JJ?
I think just the importance of everyone, students knowing that we are available if they, for any reason whatsoever, with what's going on right now with the Black Lives Matters, what's they may be experiencing in their own homes, what they may be experiencing as well with COVID-19, any type of stress that they may be experiencing. The counseling center is available and ready to help them in any way that we can. So I definitely encourage them to utilize this service for them because we're here for them. I saw our numbers go up. Any more questions?
Yes, so someone's asking if they can share this, you know, either the slides or the video with people who are not affiliated with CSUSB. And yes, of course, you can definitely do that. This particular presentation was geared towards students, but feel free to share widely. We want as many people to benefit and to get the information as possible. And then Dr. David Chavez is mentioning that, very good point. There's going to be a CSUSB memorial held at 9 a.m. tomorrow. And so we should have mentioned that. Thank you, David, for sharing that. In terms of all the links that are in the slides, you can have access to the slides directly. So you'll have the PowerPoint file itself, so you can actually highlight them and go paste them into your browser. Book recommendations. So there are so many books. I mean, the best place I can possibly direct you to is in the slide in this talk where I said on the bottom left, I said, go there because you're going to be able to find, let me see if I can just pull it up for you. You're going to be able to find like all these various authors and leaders and information on different topics. And I highlighted that for you when we were going through things here. Let me see if I can access. I guess I might not be able to while we're in here. But I would say there you're going to find, you know, amazing authors, both very famous and not so famous. Let me see if I can pull it up here for you. And so let's see if I can share my screen again. Okay, here I pulled up from this slide down here at the bottom. And as you can see, I mean, these are a lot of authors in here, but you're going to be able to, it's like an endless library. And so it really just depends, you know, what you're most interested in. But I would encourage you to use this as a starting point for book recommendations. Let's see, one person said thank you, and I also appreciate the participation of our two counselors because this session was planned so quickly. It was planned on Friday basically, and here we are on Monday, and so I'm so appreciative that they agreed so quickly to take part in this event. But it's a timely topic, and we need to get the info out ASAP. So. What are your thoughts on allowing young children to participate in the Black Lives Matter protest? Anything to consider beforehand? Do either of you two want to start or have anything to say on that?
Well, I can say that from my perspective, a personal perspective, I'm not going to speak from a psychological perspective. I think it's something that you take in consideration the age. You also want to take into consideration what you've talked about and what level they are of understanding. So I know for my family and for kids in my family, it's something that we do. They do participate in certain marches at certain times. So you want to be very aware of that. There are certain times they do not. So I think that if you have a sense of what the march is, where the time in which they will be going, I personally think that it can be extremely beneficial for kids to participate. But again, I think that's a personal choice with the family in and of themselves. So I can't really say just yes across the board. I think, again, it really depends a lot on that. I think that a lot of people may have seen the picture on Facebook of the little 5-year-old girl who was out with her family. And they were at a protest march, and she had a conversation with the police officer, and it was very impactful of that conversation between them. And I imagine that that's an experience that she will never forget, and her family would never forget. So I think it just really depends on situation and circumstances. And for Black people, in my family, we have conversations with our children at such a young age. I mean, when I was talked to about race was an experience, so I was 4 or 5-ish. And in my family, we tend to talk a lot about race at a very young age. They're usually about 5 or 6 because they've experienced something. So I think it's really dependent on the level of conversation that you've had in your families about race and the situation, and then your comfort level of going out. So that would be kind of my thought on it.
Okay. We have a lot more questions, so I'm going to move forward. So when it comes to explaining this movement with family, mainly relatives who don't care about the movement, what route would you take? I mean, I'll give a brief answer, and if either of you want to weigh in. I will always say meet a person where they're at. So I don't think that you can just, bombard them with a bunch of stuff when they're not ready to hear it. And so I usually find asking questions is a good place to start. Like, why do you feel that way? Or what, whatever they might talk about, you just ask questions and learn more. I didn't mention any books specifically, but I can mention a couple films that you could get them to watch that maybe they're open to that. In my class, I show Race, the Power of an Illusion. There's a 3-part to that series. The House We Live In basically just shows the deliberate actions that have been racist from the start of the country's founding that have led to where we're at today. And so it's only 60 minutes, but it can explain a lot. There's 2 other parts to that same series, and it's amazing. So I would say that's a good one, Race, the Power of an Illusion. Any other thoughts from either of you about, talking to family who just don't seem to care about the movement?
I believe I'm with you in the sense of asking questions and meet them where they're at. Too many arguments, and we got enough trouble going on sometimes. If they don't want to hear, they're not going to listen.
Yeah.
Even talking to people I know, if they don't want to hear it, they just tune out. So we do need to meet them where they're at. Don't spin your wheels, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think is one of those things where it's like, there's certain topics that you don't want to necessarily start by aiming to change a person's perspective, because you'll probably just get disappointed in the outcome. But by asking questions, they can get to that place on their own, so you have to just kind of provide resources where possible. Sometimes another thing I say is if they say something that's not grounded in evidence, ask them where they got the information, and also point them to accurate sources of information. Say, well, rather than reading that article, go to the original source, check out the census data, go to the actual .gov or .edu sites, and you can kind of help them sift through information and learn what's more reputable or more reliable than other things. Is there contact information for Black organizations on campus, or if you know of Black organizations of campus, or if you know of any support that they need or concerns they want addressed? I know, Ms. Hattie, you're a member of is it for students too, or is it just faculty, staff, the Black faculty, staff, and students? Or
Yeah, the Black Faculty, Staff, and Student Association is a great place because all of the different organizations that the Black organizations are come together in that association, and they talk. So that would be the first place that I would definitely seek out as well. And I don't remember the second part. Is there subjects that they want?
Yes, concerns they need help with, things they want addressed.
Wow, that's a loaded question. Things that we want to address that's in general, or things that we would like to address specifically on campus. I think there is always room for improvement. And this is our opportunity to make a change and make a difference. The one thing that I loved about the panel that I was on before, at the very end, I think his name was Antoine, he said about the first thing that we need to do is clean our own house, okay? And so, and then you can go to your neighbor's house, and then you can go to the community. And I think that if you're focusing on, are there things that need to be addressed here on campus, and are there things that we can do better, and are there improvements that are needed? Absolutely. And I think that we all can take a part and, kind of helping in that change and to be better. Again, going back to being the very best version of ourselves. So I think that, change starts here, as well as going out in the community. It's just like one of the things that I say to a lot of people who ask me, what can they do? And I'm like, the answer to that is you start with self. You need to do self-reflection. And I think that maybe, that's a good place to start. We want to be impactful, and we want to make changes in our community, but we also want to make sure that we clean house on campus and within ourselves as well.
Yes, I agree. And the only other thing that came to mind is that I do know ASI maintains a list of student clubs, and I don't know if those clubs change annually. They may, but you could go to their website and you can usually download a list of all the student clubs, and you can email the presidents of those clubs. So if there are any additional associations that we didn't mention, there may be some that you find there that you could look at too. Okay, Martin, there's a lot of questions. So as a 43-year-old white male, I have a heavy heart about my specific demographic, which has always engaged in oppression and crimes against others. I mean, it's a comment, not a question, but at the same time, I think that's, I mean, I don't want to say it's a good thing, but yeah, it's a good thing you're in touch with your emotions. There's a sad history there. Why wouldn't we feel bad about all that's gone on? And so that's not to say that, you yourself, you can live your life in the right way. You don't have to be part of that problem. So even though you come from a demographic that's what's happened in the past, it doesn't mean you go ahead and apologize to everyone for all these wrongdoings, because you're living hopefully in the right way. And so I would say it's a natural feeling. I'm not a clinician, so I'm going to turn it over, but it's natural to feel that way. And I think it's what you do with it that matters. Yeah, if either of you want to add.
No, you did it.
Okay.
That was well said.
Okay. Is it okay to log off of social media? Sometimes it becomes too much, but people make you feel like you need to be seeing what's going on. Yes, you need to do what's right, but yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It's totally okay to, you need to take, it's getting us back to what Hattie was saying about self-care. If you're getting overwhelmed, you got to take care of you. If you can't take care of you, you can't take care of others. So it's okay. The information will still be there. You might not see it today, but it will still be there. It's just the technology. If you want to find it, you'll be able to. So yeah, I totally agree with logging off if you need to do that for you. Yeah.
And I think that logging off permanently is also an option. I mean, you don't even necessarily have to do break. You can get, like, information is everywhere, and maybe it's not the forum, the place for you to get the information. Certainly it's not vetted information. So go to the source, go onto the websites, go into, whatever, BBC, CNN, or whatever it is, where you want to get your news. You don't need to, you can still be connected to the world and learn what's going on in other ways. Right. Will the memorial be live for those who cannot physically be on campus?
The link is to, yeah, the question's down I don't even think it's a live.
Yes.
I mean, it's live. It's not physical. It's all a virtual.
Right. Right. It's all virtual. So you won't go in physically be there. If you just do a search, so David Chavez has shared it, but unfortunately our participants, I don't think can see this chat that I'm able to see. And so if you do a search for CSUSB, yeah, I don't think you all can see each other. So do a search for CSUSB, George Floyd Memorial, and June 9th, and you should be able to access it and find it. Who can we get into contact with on campus to get involved with the movement, past signing petitions and donating? Yeah, that's the question. There's a lot of like-minded people on campus. I would say it would be through these clubs. It would be through professors who are teaching race and racism, who are at these panel sessions, people who are, I would just say there's a lot of like-minded people on campus. So I guess I would say do it through clubs, do it through professors, and you can get connected to others who share your passion for change. Do either of you have anything to say on that one? When will the educational system teach kids the truth about slavery and racism? I feel like I have been lied to most of my life at school. Okay, I mean, I grew up in Canada, and I was, I came down here for grad school, so I went to University of Georgia for my PhD, but yeah, and here I am. I've been teaching race and racism for 13 years now, and it's all about the history here in the United States. I don't even cover in Canada, but this is a worldwide thing. I do my study abroad to South Africa. Of course, that country is known for their system of apartheid, of legalized racism and segregation up until 1990, but it's all over the world, so there's a lot to learn. And I think there's a lot of educational reform that's needed, not only on this topic, but in so many ways. I don't know how else to answer your question. Either of you want to weigh in on that? Okay. I don't mean to laugh, but sometimes it's a coping mechanism. Okay, so as a white male, do I approach and pressure others who do not support Black Lives Matter into understanding the importance of the movement, or do I save this for individuals who ask for information? My answer there is you do what's right for you. And some people are there not to pressure, but to inform others who don't ask, I mean, and others think that it goes against their philosophy of how they want to spread information. So it's up to you. You can be out there trying to alert, people about the movement, or you can wait, but each person does it in their own way. I'm here, trying to do a webinar. Maybe you're not doing a webinar, but you're doing it in some other way. I blog about it on Psychology Today. So I think each person finds their own way that feels right to them, that's aligned with their values. And I would say, I don't think I will ever pressure people. Like, we meet people where they're at, but okay. How do you address other people that don't understand what's going on, or is that even important? I would say the first thing you do is you tell them about what's going on, and you see if they're interested in learning more. And if they are, you continue to share information. How do you reconcile within yourself supporting Black Lives Matter as well as law enforcement? I think that's a great question. I'm teaching 2 sections of race and racism right now. I'm teaching my one big section of almost 300 students, and I'm teaching another special section of almost all people in law enforcement. And I read their journals, and there's a lot of good people in law enforcement, and so there's a lot of people who want to do good. And we've seen examples of that in the news too, of people who are marching with the protesters and who are hugging them, shaking hands, or what have you. So I think that you need to remember, within any group, no matter what group you take, whether it's a group like law enforcement, there's going to be a spectrum of people, and there's going to be those who are, great and doing great things, and others who are not doing as good. So I would say don't judge a whole group by the actions of a few, but at the same time, you can still be out there protesting for changing the ones that are bad, for changing a system that's not working, for making improvements where improvements are needed. So that's what I would say. I don't know if either of you.
Well, I think it's important to know that it is okay to hold 2 feelings and thoughts at the same time. I don't think that the focal point is really about being able to support one or the other. I think it's about saying that we have a system that is broken and it needs reform. And there are good cops and there are bad cops. And, when you're asking for accountability from both. So I have law enforcement in my extended family, and I have a lot of respect for them. And I know that they do their job, and they do it in a very professional and respectful manner. So again, like Kelly said, I don't think you want to just group people up together and just assume that they're all one and all the same, because they're all different. So I think it's perfectly okay to hold both feelings and thoughts at the same time. That's a natural thing to do.
Thank you. Is my anger toward, or I should mention, we are at 5 o'clock, but our panelists have agreed to stay on until 5:30 if needed. I don't know that we need too much more time unless you continue. We do have several more questions, but we'll go up until 5:30. I do want to get your questions answered, as I think that's why we're here, to really hear from the students. So, is my anger towards heterosexual white males going to have an effect on me, as I am a homosexual white male? The older I get, I seem to be less tolerant and accepting of people who ignore equality. I think sometimes people from minority groups get tired of being the educators to all those who are in the dominant group, whatever the status happens to be, whether it's race or being a sexual minority or what have you. And I don't think it's your place to be that educator. So, if you have the motivation and you have the willingness to get out there and fight, then that's great. But if you notice yourself getting less tolerant with time, perhaps you need to take a break from that type of work. And, the clinicians can talk more about focus on yourself, or take the time you need to heal, or I don't know, go ahead, clinicians.
Yeah, I think that, again, that's a time for self-care. One of the things that I have to remind myself of on a regular basis is that it's not my responsibility to teach other people about racism or the cause. It's not my responsibility to educate them. And to be honest with you, sometimes it can get very exhausting. And so there's a balance. You have to have a balance between trying to help someone to better understand something and being able to self-care and take care of your needs. Because again, if you don't do that, if you don't spend the time in caring for yourself and your emotions and your stress level, and it's starting to get to you, then you're not going to be really any good to them anyway. And then that goes back to, meeting them where they are and at that level. So you definitely want to kind of pull back and just do some self-reflecting, see where you are, and have that balance. It's a balance of helping other people to understand your perspective without being imposing on them, and then being able to take care of yourself and make sure that you are emotionally stable and that you're in a good place as well. So did you want to, JJ, anything else?
No, I think you got it.
Yeah.
Comment, the Cross-Cultural Center on campus might be another resource for students to get connected with the Black Lives Matter movement. The Office of Student Engagement should also have a list of on-campus clubs. One person asks, how can protesting lead to change? So how does it do that? And so I guess I'll just start by saying that it draws attention, for one. And so people learn about what's going on, like what are people so upset about? And they might look into it and learn more. And even like I mentioned, South Africa, sometimes when you get pressure from the outside, that's where the change can happen. So when it just stays unpublicized and local and nobody knows about it, and it doesn't really affect anything in terms of like economically or politically or what have you, then change doesn't happen. But the more attention movement can get, and the more momentum and energy, then the greater likelihood that change can occur. People are learning that helps them vote in alignment with their values and their philosophies. And so change happens at all levels. Change starts, one thing I forgot to mention that Emily really wanted me to emphasize is that it starts in the home. And Ms. Hattie mentioned that earlier too, as one of the panelists from the session last week, and was talking about that. But, the way that parents talk to their kids, there's just, it's all levels. It's not just one place. Like, should it be politics changing? Should it be parents changing? It's everything. It's always an answer of everything. So I would say that these protests and these movements, they draw awareness and they help people to inform all those various levels of where change can occur. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
I think that that's a great question, because I get asked that all the time about, you know, what impact does protest have and marching have? I say, Google the civil rights movement in the 60s. If there wasn't the protests and the marching, a lot of the changes that ultimately happened would never have happened if the people didn't take to the streets. So I personally, unfortunately, just lately, because of the COVID-19 and I have just high risk family members, I haven't been able to go out and protest like I would like to, but I'm involved in so many other ways. And like Dr. Campbell say, you many types of opportunities in order to have your voice be heard and have your support be known. So definitely utilize those methods, but I want to, and I'm eager to get out there, because I feel that it is a powerful way to be able to show your support for a cause, and to also be out there with other people. A lot of what I do from my home in my support of Black Lives Matter and other things that I'm passionate about. I would actually prefer to be out marching with everyone else, but again, I can't do that. So you just have to find what is comfortable for you.
We have a comment or a question. I watched a video posted by my Black idol, Candace Owens, regarding George Floyd. She's amazing, and I see myself in her as a Black woman myself. She speaks of facts about the problems in the Black community, and police brutality is not on that list. What do you believe is the biggest problem in the Black community beyond racism? So either of you want to weigh in? I don't have much to say there.
Well, I get kind of, when I say the biggest problems in the Black communities, I can't specifically say one or the other is bigger, because it's a combination of many problems that's, you know, within the Black community that needs to be addressed in so many ways. When you have a people that there's so many types of injustice, there's not as many opportunities. We have disadvantages when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to unemployment, when it comes to education. It's a litany of things that create an environment that makes it very difficult for the Black community to grow and prosper as other communities. So I can't particularly say that it's one specific thing in the community, but it's a lot of things that's within the community that's affecting the community. And it's also about the community coming together within themselves to build and grow, to understand and do our part in as well in making our communities better. So it's not just one-sided, but again, you need the fairness and the opportunities to be presented for them as well. So it's an excellent question, but it's a very in-depth question that would create a lot of time for me to, you know, kind of go into everything all at once. So it's something that I think about on a regular basis, and it's something that I'm continuously trying to, you know, figure out for myself what specific thing. And there's just, it's overwhelming because it's too many things that needs to be addressed in order for us to be able to move forward. And the hope is that this is a start for really having that in-depth conversation and making sure that something happens. When I have my nieces and nephews or great nieces and nephews say to me, well, you know, I know that grandpa and great grandma and grandpa did, and they were a part of this in the civil rights movement, but it feels like we're kind of similar and we're the same. And yet we have made great progress, but we have so much further to go. So change starts somewhere, and I think that it must be now. So thanks for the question. I don't know if I really answered it, because there is no specific one thing that's bigger than the other. It's just a combination of many.
And how do we help society not use the BLM movement as a trend and use it more as a meaningful form of protest, or I guess maybe towards some lasting change? I was trying to think through some other, movements, and like, for instance, feminism or something. And, that's a movement that has kept up over time and it hasn't died away. And I was thinking, that maybe people see that as a woman's movement, as applying to so many people in the population. And I would hope that with Black Lives Matter, they wouldn't see this as a movement that's only for African Americans or Black people, that this is a problem for everybody to help solve. And so we need a more just and equitable society, and that's just it. I would hope that there's not going to be more instances that ignite the movement, but there's probably going to be. I mean, I've taught this race and racism class all these years, and every time I teach it, there's always things in the current events that happen that show why we need this course taught. So I think that there's going to be constant things that show us why this movement is important, so that I hope it keeps alive and keeps momentum. I don't know if either of you have more to say on that one.
And I think it's really dependent on all of us to make sure that it stays alive, and that we continue to fight. I mean, if everybody continue to do their part and to fight for the cause, I think that, it will help us to ultimately achieve what we need to achieve. But again, it's going to take time. Things are not going to change overnight, because I think today, just for a moment, I was watching the news, which, by the way, I don't do very often. I usually have my husband give me a recap every evening. But we weren't able to pass an anti-lynching bill. So we're in 2020, and we don't have something, a law that will punish people for doing that. So it's going to take time, and we just have to keep out there fighting for the cause. And that, again, is every voice, everybody continuing the fight.
We have a tricky question here. One of our Black students is saying that, what about, it's a long thing that I'm not going to read all of it, but what about when we look at some of the numbers and we see that white people are also killed by the police, unarmed people. And so, like, how do we know that this killing in particular with George Floyd was an act of racism? Is it about race, or is it about maybe a problem with the police, killing people who are unarmed or what have you? One thing I would like to point out within this comment is that we also do have to keep in mind, when we're presenting some raw numbers, what percent of the population do people make up? And so when you look at those numbers alone in terms of these outcomes of how many people were killed at the hands of police who were unarmed, and we look at it in terms of racial background, we have to think of, well, what percent of the population? If we have African Americans making up 13% of the population, and they're on par with the number of white people who were killed in the same year, white people are the majority in the country. And so just contextualize some of those findings when you're looking at those raw numbers. It's not to say that any killing is right. So it doesn't matter the person's race, that shouldn't happen. And so that's what the whole point is, to draw attention to it. And it shouldn't happen irrespective across race. Whether you want to see it as an act of racism or not, that's up to you, I would say. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's see if there's anything else. I think that's where we're at. So we've answered all our students' questions. And I just want to thank our panelists again and thank all the students who remain. Thanks for coming out to hear this information. And then I'll just remind you that you can email me, kelly@csusb.edu for the slides. We'll get them posted in the video. Thanks to both of you. It's a trying time and I know you have a lot going on. And so thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.